Hello, Abigail here with the astrology for this week. This week is kind of interesting. It's not the biggest astrology of 25 by like any stretch, but there's a lot of stuff happening that is echoing shifts and transits we have had earlier in this year. Venus will be entering a Mars sign. We had the Venus retrograde in a Mars sign. We have Uranus heading back into Taurus. There's just a feeling as though we've been here before, but we've also never been here before. It's this really weird. It's basically the vibe of the end of 2025, where like we're in between this really new, completely different astrological sky than we've had in a long time, and then this little back to what is familiar, what we've already known, and it's also punctuated by a full moon in Taurus. So there's a lot happening, and the full moon in Taurus is also got a domicile Venus, but then Venus also shifts this week as well. So it very much feels as though we are in between a lot of things. And then Mercury is going to station retrograde. But let's kind of go down in the chronological order of what's going to happen. So on Tuesday, we have Mars entering Sagittarius. And this is the second planet to move into Sagittarius this year. We already had Mercury, which is going to station retrograde at the end of this week. But now Mars is in Sagittarius. And Mars, remember, was in its very happy domicile in Scorpio. And in Sagittarius, Mars kind of has, well, neutral is quite the correct word, but it doesn't have any specific dignity. It's not fall, it's not detriment, it's not exalted, it's not domicile, but Mars is very happy in fire signs. It likes that energy, that forward motion. It is a little counterintuitive to some Sagittarian themes because it's the Jupiter rulership, but it is a place where Mars can grow and expand and experience change. It's also a place in which Mars learns things about regulation because regulation is not a suppression of feelings. It is the ability to feel feelings in flow, in reflection to your environment. So, for instance, if your environment is really rough and difficult, you having a rough and difficult response is normal and appropriate. If your environment is happy and comfortable, you being happy and comfortable is a normal response to your environment. Most of us live in ups and downs, obviously, so does the ability to kind of cycle through these feelings. And Mars is able to do that in Sagittarius. It is not restricted, but there is a bit of tempering here. And so I really do like a Sagittarius Mars. If you meet one in real life, they are forward thinkers. They desire more than the now. And they're also very good at sharing their ideas and sharing their reasons for doing things. They're also very good at convincing people of things. And so this, but like not convincing them in a Libra kind of way of like, policy and back and forth and regulated ideas. It is more like that person who is really into something and they're like, let me tell you, and their enthusiasm and knowledge sparks something off in you. It can feel a little culty if they're really passionate about something, but that's the energy we're going into. And I really enjoy this because it's the energy we are going to get to experience while we're in the Mercury retrograde in murkier places. So it feels nice and supportive to have this forward thinking, forward moving Mars while we have Mercury retrograde. Now, yes, is it going to, create friction? Yeah, because we're going to be frustrated. We're going to want to move forward. We're going to want to expand. But if you take this as the next 3 weeks with the Mercury retrograde as a time to realign with your desires, I think you'll be able to minimize some of that kind of forward motion. Basically, this Mercury retrograde, from my perspective, is a lot about reconnecting to the underside of things, to the hard things in your life, the darkness, and also just what are your raw needs and desires. And this Mars is going to help us get that. Do we have to recognize that it's not something that's going to change right away because we're in a retrograde? Yeah. But once we can come to terms with it, that Mars can really be an activator for us connecting with what is truly aligned with us, what we truly want to do. So I'm excited for Mars and Sagittarius. Also, this is a really sweet spot for Mars. It has its domicile. It goes into Sagittarius, which is pretty neutral and also a fire sign. And then it will go into Capricorn, and that is where it's in exaltation. So, this kind of time of year when Mars is involved, a lot can happen, and it's actually really motivating, and a lot of us can get a lot done. It also means there's a lot of shakeup in our lives because Mars is doing the most. So know that there's a caveat. If you do not like change, maybe this isn't good for you. But if you are looking for change, if you're looking for transformation, Mars being in this kind of little quadrant of the zodiac is really sweet. Moving on, because we have a 0 degree retrograde Uranus, Mars also on this day goes in opposition with Uranus. So there is a little bit of frustration. It's also kind of a tragic reminder of where we are and where we are not. Uranus is about being forward thinking, it is chaos, it is innovation, it is throwing paint at a wall and making art, it is doing things not necessarily out of necessity, but because of the times. All of the kind of Uranian stuff is swept up in the idea of the time, and Uranian people are always a step ahead of the current trend in motion. I think the only caveat I have for Uranian people is if they do not continue to grow, they will become an old god. And the old gods are not fun to be around, and they're really stuck in their ways. So Uranus does have that ability to kind of get set. You know, if you know the myth of Uranus, he gets overthrown by his children. Um, because he was very controlling and, very abusive. So if you can continue being forward thinking like a younger Uranus, you have it in the bag. If you resist change, if you try to control too much, those Uranian tendencies will turn you to stone, basically, in my perspective. So when Mars is coming up against this moment, we are kind of having to deal with what is innovation. I think this is going to bring up some stuff with AI and possibly crypto because of the Mercury retrograde. Mercury is currency. Um, but this is going to be a bit frustrating because it's going to be like, we want change, we want to do this, but we're in opposition to a retrograding Uranus that is very soon going back into Taurus, which is going to knock us back into what is going to feel a bit like an old age. And then, we're going to be moving back through Sagittarius and to loosen up. But in this moment, it is like coming up and being like, this is what things could be. This is what the future can look like, but we are not there yet. And this is an opportunity to really ask yourself what action you choose to take for transformation, for liberation, for change. Um, these can also be really frustrating because it can make you feel like there's nothing you can do to change. Because when you come up against one of the big outer planets, it is a cultural issue, it is a social issue, it is not an individualistic issue, and it can feel overwhelming. But I think the antidote to this is to be like, how can I, as a part of the collective, do what I can do to transform and change and shift? I also think this is going to come with a lot of people coming into recognition of what the systems actually do. Because a lot of people are not aware that a lot of the crap laws we have are based on old disability laws that were meant to oppress disabled people. We also have tons of laws that are old slavery laws that are meant to oppress a specific group of people. And I think a lot of people are going to be recognizing, especially as we're going to have Saturn stationing direct here soon. Especially as we have Saturn stationing direct eventually. I think it's like 2 or 3 weeks. Uh, what is not working, and also the root of what has not been working, because Pisces is the depths. If you want to think of like the myth of like the tree of life, Pisces is like the very tip of a taproot. If you know what a taproot is, those are those roots that go straight down in order to reach different layers of the soil to access different like sources of energy and nutrition. And so that's kind of what Pisces is. And when you can get to the bottom of something, especially when it's not working, you can often transform everything. Is this a quick process? No, but I think this Uranus opposition, we're going to see a lot more people recognizing and realizing. We're also going to see a lot more people digging their heels in. That is just, there's always two sides to a coin. But a lot of people are going to start to see, oh, this is the way things ought to be. We're not headed that direction. What can I do to turn the tides? And that's really exciting. And if you already are doing things to turn the tides, how can you inspire and encourage and uplift people to do the same? Because, I think once you get past the initial phase of recognizing that everything's related to slavery and disability, once you can get past that point, I think the hope breeds itself often, but that initial phase of crushing recognition is hard. And so, if you're already past that stage, encourage someone who is in that initial stage to keep going, to keep deconstructing, to keep pushing, to get to the point where there is a self activating level of hope and inspiration and liberation. Especially as you start to deconstruct, you will find people who have fought this for forever, and they're really inspiring. Anywhoozle, moving on to Wednesday, I have made a longer video about this full moon. It's really interesting. We had a South Node trine, and it's it's not bad at all, but it is kind of a nostalgic full moon. It's a release of things that are done. Um, there's other stuff happening in the sky also. That Venus is right where that new moon in Libra is. So there's a really direct link from 2 weeks ago, what has been happening. So pay attention. And look out for that video. It should be posted Monday. Then on Thursday, we have Venus entering into Scorpio. And, you know, Venus is out of domicile. It won't be back in a domicile sign until we hit, hit will be sometime in the spring. Um, and then also, and then we'll have exaltation in Pisces. But I always find Venus and exaltation to be an interesting story, but that is for another time. But going into Scorpio, Venus is in detriment, and it's a rough place for Venus, but it is a place where some of the most unexpected beauties can be found. Venus Scorpio people are some of the most raw, honest, like wildly beautiful people you will meet. They can also be toxic as hell. But like I said, two sides to every coin. You have this deep ability to feel and understand and to see things as they are, and to even go beyond just seeing things as they are and seeing them at the absolute depth of their difficulty and their rot. And in that rot, a lot of Venusian people with this placement can find the tools for growth and change, because as we know, things that rot also give life, usually. So we're moving into kind of a darker phase for Venus. I think this is also helpful because while maybe not completely fun, it is an ability very much like Mars and Sagittarius to reconnect with your core, to reconnect with your body as a sack of meat with nerve endings and a complex web of impulses, and to really explore what need and craving and longing means for you. Venus and Scorpios, they long and crave for things. They can also obsess over things, but there's this deep hunger that they're so very often um, very good at putting into words and experiencing and sharing with others. And so I encourage all of us, whether we have this placement or not, to really engage with the hunger and the craving, and recognizing something that Venus in detriment also does is recognizing where you're not resourced, recognizing where there is a gap in your care, where um, your needs aren't being met. And I want to be clear, none of our needs are going to be met by one person ever, and that's not how it's meant to work. But are there relationships that are supposed to be meeting certain needs that just aren't? And maybe that's a conversation to have during this Mercury retrograde. Also, we're going to have a Venus conjunction with the Mercury retrograde. We're going to have another one. There's a lot. A lot is really wrapped up in this one. This Mercury retrograde is going to be real interesting. I might try and make a video on that. I think I mentioned this before. My life has been turned upside down, so I may or may not get to it. But if you really want it, send me some encouragement in the comments. Be like, yes, Abigail, make us a Mercury retrograde in Scorpio video to relieve yourself from the stress of moving your entire life. So that's the Venus and Scorpio entrance. It is going to be kind of a little bit of a dark night of the soul as we go through the Mercury retrograde, but it is going to be a really good recalibrating of what we truly, truly want moving forward. And I think that's really important, even if it might be hard to recognize. Then moving on, we have Uranus re-entering Taurus. We are back in Taurus for a minute. It will be back in Gemini in April of 2026. So we have a bit of time left with this. What has Uranus and Taurus taught you? What has Uranus and Taurus brought to light for you? What is it telling you? What is it feeding you? Uranus has a 84-year cycle around the sun. And so every single little quadrant of our zodiac is 7 years. So, what has happened in the last 7 years? What part of your chart is this hitting off of? This is a great time to kind of dig into that, to see the differences. When did Uranus shift over the summer? I can't remember, but it was early summer when Uranus moved into Gemini. Um, so really ask yourself, what have you learned? What house has it been in? How has it felt different in this move? And where do you think it's headed? Because Uranus is about innovation and change, and whatever house it's going into, a la our little Gemini bestie, is going to undersee some massive shifts in the next 7 years. Um, I think I might already know what some of them are because it's going to be in my 10th house, hitting off my midheaven and my south node. Obviously then in opposition to my north node. And that's pretty much all I have in um, as far as major placements in those places. So check that. What is the axis of Uranus and Gemini? What is the axis for you of Taurus and Scorpio? And how has that played out over the last 7 years? The last 7 years for me would have been like mid grad school. Yeah, it would have been, let me see if I can remember. Yeah, I would have been almost done with grad school. So go back into memory lane and see what has changed and transformed. See the innovation that's happened in your life. See where things have been ripped out by their roots, which is very much what Uranus does, and kind of made all topsy turvy, because that's what you've been kind of trying to been put back into place over this summer, and now it's going to get torn up a little bit again, and then it'll be free in April. So just know that that's headed back there. Also, reminder, Uranus and Taurus, when it comes to world stuff, is a lot about the consequences of our systems, especially on the ecosystem and plants and animals. If you're not paying attention, tons of animals are going extinct. The coral reefs are dying. A lot of this information has really been highlighted and advocated for during Uranus and Taurus. And so ask yourself, how can I participate as we finish up this cycle and then move into Gemini and find some solutions for the destruction that humans have created? That's not the only topic. We could talk about a lot more, but that's what I've noticed a lot of. Then Saturday, we have the sun trine the North Node. This is a moment to really, and this really ties back into, and this is how astrology works. This really ties back into the next Mercury retrograde, us really thinking about realignment and what we truly want and what are like absolute deal breakers for us in life. And this sun trine the North Node is an opportunity to really manifest and push forward our dreams and desires. I did just post something on Threads today about how benefic astrological aspects will fuck your life up if you truly want change, because they will change your life. And if it is good for you in 10 years, the astrology is very likely, especially if there's bigger planets involved, going to be good. It's just not good right now. And so this sun trine the North Node is like, what are you willing to let go of? What are you willing to release in order to move into the future, in order to connect with what is possible, with your progression as a soul, with, and also, I don't talk about this all the time in my astrology videos, but I do a lot of past life work. Like, what do you want for your soul moving forward? What do you want to resolve so next time maybe your soul has a little bit of an easier time? What is important for you to dream up in order to create the environment that your soul needs to thrive? And obviously, this is all predicated on the fact that we know that we all are in a system that is meant to crush us. So I'm not asking you to be like, let's pretend there's a different world. There's not. But what can you do and what can your community do to create a world and to rectify things in your own life so that you can progress in spite of the BS that's happening around us? Then, last but not least, we have our Sunday moment, which is when Mercury stations direct at 6 degrees of Sagittarius. And we will be headed through this little moment. I should have looked this up earlier, but I'm looking up here because, let's be honest, these have been progressively getting more and more chaotic. And I'm here for it. All right, so yes, on the 29th of November, we will have the station direct, and then we have 3 weeks after that where everything where we're picking up the pieces and kind of going through the rubble of this Mercury retrograde. I do think this one is going to be really personal. Like a lot of stuff's going to happen on the world stage and a lot of stuff is going to happen internally, but like the physical activation of us getting stuff externally done is going to feel rough. So really focus on realignment with this moment in time and also doing what you can do under the circumstances that you have. You're going to have a lot more activation for change and being able to shift things in your own life in 2026. Sorry, guys. But use this Mercury retrograde to find realignment with what you want to do so that once we hit all the planets moving back into the signs in the earlier part of 2026, you know where you want to be. You know what your soul wants. You know what your heart wants. Um, the only way to really shift things astrologically is to start working with it early, at least in my opinion. You can always also remediate things, but that is still getting ahead of the transit. Start getting ahead of what's coming in 2026. Start thinking about what you want. Start thinking about what you want to invest in, the people you want to be around, the stories you want to tell, that deep core gut desire. How can you meet that this year in some way? Do you want more visibility? How can you be seen? You want more connection? How can you find that? You want more money? How can you access it? Um, it's not doesn't all have to be just emotional things. You want more stability financially. How can you start to achieve that in the context of the world we live in? And also, how can you build currency with the people you are with? How can you take your mindset out of capitalism and into creation and into building a world that works better for you? Do skills shares. Think about what you have to offer the community that isn't financial, that is something that you can give to them. Um, I'm disabled, so sometimes I feel like I can't offer enough, which is also ableist, fun fact. But something that I can do and that I do all the time is that I accumulate knowledge to share with my community. A lot of my community can struggle with access. A lot of information is not easily accessible unless you were on TikTok when the algorithm was actually feeding us stuff that seemed helpful. And so something I do is I store information in my little brain. And then when someone needs something like, how do I access medical care? How do I get my doctor to listen to my needs? Am I autistic? I have a list of resources and experiences and stories that I know that I can share with other people. And that is a part of community care. That's just one example, but like it doesn't have to be monetary. Knowing how to navigate this system is a form of currency that you can share with other people. Knowing the right words to say in a really um, like bureaucratic and systemic like area like medicine where your needs might not be met, knowing the words to say and giving them to someone else, that is currency. You are helping someone else get the care that they need by knowing how to intimidate a doctor. So yeah, do not underestimate the power of what you can do. Do not underestimate what currency is. And yeah, this week is about change. This week is about release. This week is about preparing ourselves for the steps ahead and recognizing the ways in which we have the power to change things and the ways in which we have the power to care for each other. Anyways, my loves, I will see you hither and yon. I love you all. Please like and subscribe. I really enjoy seeing people join my channel and knowing that these videos are getting to people and helping them navigate life. If you have any questions or suggestions, pop them in the comments. I will read all of them. I may or may not take all of the advice, but if you have something you want to know or a way that you want something explained, tell me. Anyways, love you all. See you later.